You know, one of my overriding passions, if I may say, in life have been books. I've been reading books since, I don't know, since the age of 8, 9. And because of impaired eyesight, which I'm supposed to have sort of inherited from my mother, I've been wearing glasses since the age of 5. Which it turns out was a real blessing because I couldn't participate in outdoor sports because of, things like football played in the monsoon, hockey. Obviously, we could not play with glasses on. So it sort of channelized me into reading. And I love reading to such an extent that even today when my eyesight, I'm now in my 80th year, my eyesight is considerably impaired, glasses are not improving the situation. Yet I managed to read probably 1 or 2% of what I used to do 10 years ago. I used to be able to read, on an average, 3 to 4 books a week. And during my father's lifetime, before I got a job, I used to buy cheap books, paperbacks, basically the Upanishads, one by one. And so by 1964, I had a considerable library of my own. Quite special books in the sense that they included books on Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, mysticism, things like that. Why I mentioned this is because it was through books that I was introduced to Sahaj Marg. My father had a friend, Mr. Veera Raghavan, who was a chemist. He was one of those people who had an associateship of the Royal Institute of Chemistry, England. And he was in the forensic department of the Madras government. None of us knew that he was a preceptor in Sahaj Marg system. But he used to come to my house because being also a homeopath, he and my father used to discuss a lot of things. And one day he saw me in the library and said, since you are interested so much in reading all these things which are very special topics, why don't you do something about it? I have mentioned this in my book about Babuji Maharaj, my master, which was written in 1974, which is a story by itself. We'll come to that later. So when he gave me this invitation, I said, well, I have been doing some things on my own, but I have no guidance, so I have stopped. Then he said, some of us, we sit and meditate, and we have an acharya. We request you to come. My father joined up with the mission the next week, which happened to be Basant Panchami Day of 1972, February 1972. But I had to go to Bombay on my company work, and my induction was delayed by a week. So it was through books, that I came to Sahaj Marg, through the way of knowledge. And it's interesting, that in one of the messages in Whispers, Babuji says, my son is not something like that, I can't quote exactly. He's not a mystic, he's a karma yogi. See. He has to do, feel, experience. And in that sense, therefore, he's a very practical man. And of course, he goes on to say other things which are relevant, but you will read them in Whispers. Now, how did this book, My Master, come to be written? I was in Madurai. I think it was the year 1974, because Babuji's health was declining. He was in his 75th year. He was frail, as we all know. He weighed about 40 kilograms when he was well. and you could lift him up like a baby. And naturally, you know, I had received so much from him during the period 64 to 74. This thing about Guru Dakshina, what we in India as disciples traditionally offer to the Guru, was working on my mind. And during the meditation in Madurai, the thought came to me that the most fitting Guru Dakshina would be to write about him, because till then nobody had written about Babuji Maharaj as a biography, you know. People had praised him extravagantly in some articles. They boasted about their own discipleship, things like that, but there was no cogent, coherent biography of Babuji Maharaj. So I thought it would be the most fitting. And I seem to hear Babuji saying, it is an excellent idea. 3 days later, I was in one of those hill places with a coffee estate, some 40 miles out of Coimbatore. And we were in a bungalow, which was normally the manager's bungalow, but he appeared to have gone on a holiday to Kerala. So we had exclusive occupation. We were about 3 or 4 people. And this decision to write came back to me. So I sent one of my people out to buy some paper, and he came back with ruled 40-page notebooks, cheap paper, flimsy cover, but something on which I could write. And then I sat down and wrote what I thought was going to be the first chapter, which eventually became the second chapter. 3 days later in Coimbatore, I wrote the second chapter, which became the first chapter. So the book got written in about, I think, 2 months. Of course, I didn't know it was going to be published, or you know, Babuji would think so highly of it. I had developed the practice of sending him each chapter as I finished it. And he praised extravagantly the chapter on love. He said, it is marvelously written. I'm quoting. Though I don't know what he wrote about love, you see. I wrote about him, which incidentally conveys the idea that he was love, you see, because writing about love, I wrote about him. And he said it is marvelously written, so whatever it was. He used to write back to me after reading every chapter. I know he read every chapter because he told me, and others told me also, that he had it read out to him and kept commenting. And he never commented except about chapter on love. And that one sentence was, it is marvelously written. In another letter, he asked me to expunge one sentence. He had been talking about transmission and the power of transmission, the effects of transmission, its miraculous ability to transform a disciple into the Guru himself. And in that context, he had told me that there was a certain system of meditation where if the Guru and disciple sat together and the disciple happened to have been appropriately developed to a level necessary for the purpose, in one sitting, he became physically and in every other way a replica of the Guru. But, added the master, he was dead. I had written this in the book. He said, please remove this sentence as it will make people afraid and it will not attract more abhyasis. Nobody wants to die, in Sahaj Marg. So that one sentence was all that was changed. What I wrote was never edited either by me or anybody else. It is as I wrote, word for word, comma for comma, full stop for full stop. Eventually, it went into publication, and Babuji, of course, praised it extravagantly. He told my father it would be the best book of the mission. My father asked him, why, before it was published, Babuji, why don't you write a preface or an introduction? Babuji answered him, Rajgopalchari, the book was about me, so it would not be appropriate for me to write a preface. Then my father said, shall I write a preface? He said, no, that is not permitted at all because he is your son. And as the father, you cannot praise your own son. So then my father asked, what shall we do about it? He said, this book needs no introduction. It speaks for itself. That is his language, It speaks for itself. Another person who praised it extravagantly was Justice M.L. Chaturvedi of the Allahabad High Court. He wrote to me when he read the book, I cherish this book and it shall be on my bedside table for me to read every day of my life. You are the first man in Sahaj Marg who I see is the true bird flying on both wings, the material and the spiritual, because you have achieved a high status in your material life and you have achieved perhaps even a higher state in your spiritual life. I bless you with more and more progress. So that was how the book was received, and needless to say, it sold well. And it was my everlasting regret that though many people handled cameras, in those days and tape recorders, the quality was very poor. They used it in flickering light in the evenings when there was no power, with just a hurricane lamp lit. There was the sound of grass being cut up into bhusa. Bhusa is the cattle feed that we produce. And there were all sorts of other noises, creaking of carts going in the lane just outside Babuji's house, dog barking, every sort of noise. By day, it was the millions of parrots, the millions of sparrows that used to flood his garden and go on all day. You can probably hear it in some of our older recordings of Babuji's voice. Had there been adequate technical material or equipment available in those days, we could have made a really, what I think, a stunning movie of Babuji Maharaj, his daily life, things like that, But that possibility was lost. So we are left to books to find out what he was, how he was, what he lived like, what was his daily schedule, things like that. So in that way, this book by Master appealed to most people, and especially because I was very close to him and very intimate with him. We were more like father and son than guru and disciple. And I used to ask lots of questions, and he answered. When I went to Shahjahanpur, I used to sleep with just near him on a charpai in his own bedroom, that sort of thing, you see. So people got into the habit of always asking me to tell us something about Babuji Maharaj. So this book sort of filled up the gap, you see, there also. Because it's difficult to go on telling stories about Babuji, because there were many intimate, shall we say, snippets of dialogues which I couldn't possibly write about nor speak about. For instance, I can tell you that before I was made his successor in 1974, he had been preparing one person, but for some reason, he dropped the idea. He had considered 2 or 3 other people, but found in them, I don't know what, maybe character traits or defects, which made them, in his opinion, unsuitable for this post. So these secrets I could not mention in that book, see, because at that time, it would have been, of course, letting the cat out of the bag, which was forbidden. Babuji used to say of our talks, he would say this is private talk, which meant it was confidential, or he would say this is Khandani talk or family talk, which means it was absolutely forbidden to mention it even to anybody else, even your family. So most of it was, talk like that. Otherwise, this Bymaster would have been about 10 times its size if I had been permitted to record everything that I had heard from him in the intimacy of our late nights in Shahjahanpur. You know, because he used to sleep very late. 11 o'clock was early for him. And when we went to bed, it was often around midnight. And we used to sleep on two charpoys side by side. I could touch him if I just put out my hand. And the additional thing which kept us wide awake, you know, till late hours were these small field mice which abounded that house. They were running all over us all the time. And Babuji said, "Are they troubling you?" I said, "No, because you are here, you know. When I think of you, I don't notice the mice, I don't feel them." So it went on sometimes till 4 o'clock, even 5 o'clock. So this book by Master is what I knew of him, I saw of him, I experienced with him, both by means of verbal communication, by observing him, and in my meditation. So in that sense, it is a limited exposition of the Master, because of course nobody can give a complete exposition of a living Master. We probably see, you know, they say in an iceberg you see 1/8 which is exposed. In a Master, I think you can't say you even see 1/100th of 1%. But if this is to be 1/100th of 1%, what should it have been had it been a complete knowledge of him, his work, his purpose on earth? Because most people, you know, very loosely and rather hypocritically say, he's a master, his work, you know, and they stop because they cannot continue. It is an intransitive verb or a transitive verb, whatever it is. Or they say, he must be God, God on earth. How can we mere mortals know anything about him? Assumption of humility, which is again false. In Sahaj Marg, we don't, at least my master, Babuji Maharaj, never thought much of humility. He said humility is being natural. Both arrogance and humility as it is practiced in Hindu society are both hypocritical. Arrogance means assuming to yourself things which are not, which you have not, which you may never be. Humility is trying to pretend that you are not even what you are, that you are prepared to take the dust from everybody's feet and going out of the gate and reviling him. You know, from reading about St. Paul, who was called Saul of Tarsus before he became converted to Christianity. He was one of the apostles who never saw Christ in his lifetime. And he reviled Christ all his life. But it seems one day when he was crossing the desert, he heard a voice, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me like this?" And at that moment, he was converted. And he became one of the most important, you know, disciples. Not disciples, what do you call it? Apostles of Christ. Master unseen. Why I say this? We who are now here from the time of Babuji Maharaj, we have had so much exposure to a living Master. We have rubbed shoulders with him, we have been near him, we have eaten with him, we have heard him speak. I was surprised always when my Western brothers and sisters loved his hookah more than him. You can hear this praise in some of the old recordings of Babuji with his Vaishnava Abhyasi's disciples. And he humorously says of his hookah, "You know, it speaks to me." What does it say? Well, that is in a different language, I am telling you. You know what it is called? Hookah. Yes, Babuji, what is it called? I am telling you, it is called Habil Babil. No. Like that, you used to speak about the hookah, make them laugh. I used to ask Babuji, why do you just make them laugh and, you don't tell them something which they should hear instead of telling them what they love to hear. He said, you see, this is the danger with loving. You don't know what you are loving, why you are loving, and should you love it at all. So he said love is a very dangerous thing, see, because at the highest level, God, and without that love, you can never see God or know God. At the lowest level, it is the enemy of spirituality. And he explained to me that in the Sanskrit we call it moha. You see, he said the moha means attachment. And he told me how the great king Dasharatha, died of putra moha, or fascination for his son. When the son left, this man collapsed. So moha of any sort, you see, is taboo, whether it is for son, for wife, for job, for this world, even for your own life. That was one of the lessons that Babaji Maharaj gave me very early in life. We should desire neither life nor death. When somebody was there sitting near to us, he said, what should we desire? He said, I am telling you, we should desire nothing. Because if there is a guide to guide you on the spiritual path, he knows what you should get, what is good for you. Where is the question of you desiring anything? So we have to be like he later explained, the living dead, you see. Or as he said, like the dead in the hands of the dresser, like a body prepared for burial. It offers neither resistance nor cooperation. It is, and we have to work with it. So these are many of the lessons, which were there in those years, what I would call preliminary lessons. In a way, they were also elementary lessons in spirituality, how not to love wrongly, how it is almost impossible to love correctly, how even the word love is misused by the whole of humanity with few exceptions, because Babaji Maharaj said, love is not for human beings, love is only for God. What is it that we must have for human beings? He said, affection. That's why you write to your dad, yours affectionately. You write to your wife, yours affectionately. Affection is reserved for human intercourse. Love for God. So one Westerner, asked a sort of teasing question, what about love between husband and wife, Babaji Maharaj? He said, I'm telling you, it is very good. Husband must love his wife. Wife must love her husband. And she probably implied about this physical thing, And he said, that is not love. That is nature's instrument for procreation. Unfortunately, it has become totally confused with love, which doesn't exist at all for the human being. So they think this is love. See? And we are falling into it repeatedly and so on and so forth. So these preliminary or very elementary lessons were all that most people have absorbed from him, even after 20 years in Sahaj Marga. Because they thought, this is it, you see. Like in one of the Upanishadic stories, a Rakshasa called Vritra and Indra, go to a guru for education about what is the truth, Satyam. So he says, the Sarira is Satya. The Rakshasa, going back, looks into a well and sees himself, with his garlands, with the jewelry, bedecked. And he says, it is good. What the Guru said is correct, And he was happy. Indra, on the other hand, sees a dead body being taken for cremation. And he says, how can this be it if it is going to be destroyed by fire? And then he went back and asked the next question, you see. From that, the Taittiriya Upanishad comes, you see. And which says, Annam Brahmeti Vejanat, Pranam Brahmeti Vejanat, that sort of thing, you see. Know the food to be Brahman, know the breath to be Brahman, know bliss to be Brahman, things of that, like that, 5 or 6 levels. So what we absorb, we must mull over, meditate over, and then further questions rise, with which you must go to the Guru. Few people did, because I may say confidently that out of 100,000 people, probably 5 or 6 related to the Guru in that way. They were able to think and then go back and say to the Guru, but Master, you said this, how can it be when this is like this? He said, you are asking a good question. Now I am telling you. See. People never did. They were very happy. Babuji did not bother. He said, what the Gita says, what the Gita Acharya says, you see. He said, of those who read the Gita, maybe 1 in a million will read it properly. Of those who read it properly, 1 in a million may understand. Of those who understand it, 1 in a million may put it into practice. Of those who practice it, hardly 1 in a million may make it even to the first level. This is what Lord Krishna says in the Gita, in the Falashruti part, early part, you see. He says, this is the truth. Babuji said, this is the truth, you see. If everybody who comes to me were to become a saint, India would have been a land of saints thousands of years ago, see. Because there were capable rishis, munis who were instructing. They gave us the knowledge that we are teaching today. They were unsuccessful because human beings were not ready, not willing. He said, I don't mind if they are just not ready, I can make them ready, because preparation is like cooking. You get vegetables, you make them ready to be cooked, then you cook, then you eat. See? But he says, when they are unwilling, what can I do? Therefore comes this famous answer to a question, what is necessary to become an abhyasi? And later, what is necessary to be a preceptor? Willingness is all that I need, Babuji said. If you are willing, I can do with you what I wish. And my desire is only to make you perfect, like my great master, Laraji Maharaj taught me. Babuji was always speaking about Lalaji Maharaj. I mean, anybody who has interacted with him knows that he was always saying, Lalaji Maharaj said this, Lalaji Maharaj said that. And his oft-repeated statement to Abhyasis, where will you get a master like him? See, one of the photographs in my book is like that, you know, Babuji sitting on his bed in the room where I sleep now, and holding out his hands like this and saying, where will you get a master like that? And for anything that happened, he gave credit to Lalaji Maharaj. It was not just, you know, a word of mouth or just a courtesy, or as people say nowadays, you know, Narayan said this, Narayan said that, referring to the great Narayan. They won't mention their names or Guru's name. That is hypocrisy. Here it was 100% from the heart. Babuji, today's sitting was wonderful. Look here, that is Lalaji's grace. Babuji, that man said you had liberated his mother. I am telling you, if one has a master like mine, anything is possible. Today you are blessed, Babuji says, and he then adds with a smile, it is all Lalaji's grace. I would like to take the risk of saying it was his magnificent obsession. Not an obsession in the sense of the trivial obsessions we have with men, materials, prosperity, things like that. But his grand passion, as they say in French. He lived by Babuji, for Babuji, and only Babuji. He taught what Babuji taught. He said what Lalaji said. He spoke what Lalaji spoke. He quoted Lalaji Maharaj as often as he could. And when I asked him once, have you nothing else to talk about except Lalaji Maharaj? He said, what else is there in this world to talk about? You know, we were coming back from Denmark by a SAS flight, and they were showing a nice movie. In those days, we had to pay $5 or $2.50 for a set of earphones. He said, I don't want because I'm not going to see. You keep. You are a young fellow. So I was watching the movie, listening. Suddenly, he would pull off my speaker, my earphones, and say, look here, what Lalaji said. I was distracted from the picture like this probably every 10 seconds. So I said, Babuji, will you never stop talking about Lalaji? He said, that can happen only no more, and I'm in the brighter world with him, you see. As long as I am alive, as long as I breathe, it's only for Lalaji and only by his grace. And then he said, you know, Parthasarathi, I am still living only by his grace. I said, how? He said, he is not allowing me to complete my work on earth, because the moment my work is completed, I have to go. So he is extending my work so that I can live in here with you all. He said, to that extent is the master important in life. And then he was very unhappy when he saw his things being recorded on tape. And he said, how I wish there had been recording devices in his time, because he had such a mellifluous voice, and he had a beautiful voice when he sang. He used to sing songs of Kabir and things like that, all bhajans. He said, it's a great pity that his voice went unrecorded. And his visage became so sad. You could see that he really felt very unhappy about it. And occasionally he would also tell us that how he met Lalaji first time. And the meeting lasted probably a few minutes. And he would add, I met him only perhaps 10 times in my whole lifetime. You know? And here people come every day, and it's like the biblical reference to a bucket which goes into the well and returns again and again empty. I'm very fond of that reference because it shows what Abhyasis do here. You know, come here, go back, come here, go back, come here, go back. Much more sad, much more poignant when we think of how many times they went to Shahjahanpur. The biggest well of all, the ocean of bliss. And the foolishness of people, you know, when they sat there and asked Babuji to describe the ocean of bliss. I was almost once beating a man. Of course, I contained myself. When he came and said, Babuji Maharaj, can you show me one of your disciples who has completed the journey? Then I will join Sahaj Marg. You know, I slapped my forehead and said, what is this idiot asking? When you are sitting in front of the master who produces liberated souls, you are asking him to show you one of those? So Babuji answered in a very nice way. He said, if I show you one, how will you believe it? Is my word enough? He said, yes, Babuji. Then he said, when I tell you I have done it, why is my word not enough? Then I asked that man, he was a senior deputy secretary in the government of India. I said, when you are sitting in his presence, don't you feel it? Isn't it? And he just smiled and walked away. So those were, to my mind, spiritual tragedies, you see. When people came and went without being able to say, I came, I saw, I conquered. What do you conquer? Julius Caesar grabbed a bit of Italian mud, you see, and said, I came and I saw and I conquered. Here we conquer ourself, our lower self, our tendencies. These are the things we have to conquer. And we think we are conquering the master. No, I'm telling you, master is very fond of me. He speaks to me always. He offered me lunch at his table. Trivial things like that went to make up their egos, bloat their egos even further. Whereas Babuji, when he went, he used to tell me that Lalaji, you know, was very poor, under very poor circumstances he lived. He had a lot of children. And Lalaji himself has written that in winter, he had only one torn rasai under which the whole family used to sleep. Once Babuji Maharaj went there to Fatehgarh, rather late, at about 9 p.m. And in winter, 9 p.m. is equal to midnight, you know. And the house was closed. There were no lights. He slept on a slab of stone outside the door, granite. He had nothing to cover himself, only one of those cheap pullovers, you know, that he had. I said, Babuji, how did you manage? He said, I was in constant remembrance. Nothing affected me. And in the morning, Lalaji opened the door, saw his disciple on the door and on the slab of stone, which was the first step. And he said, Ramchandra, why didn't you knock? So I said, Babuji, yes, why didn't you knock? He said, one must not disturb the Guru because he's doing so much. And poor man, when he's resting, should you disturb it just because you are there? You see, now people complain to me, we are stopped at the gate, your door is always closed, your security, blah, 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 so many things. He was sleeping on a slab of stone. Then he said he ate only once a day when he was with Lalaji. And he ate only one chapati. I said, was there any necessity to regulate your diet during your sadhana period? He said, no, it was not that. You see, I knew my master was in poor circumstances. So I did not want to eat too much. So I ate only one chapati per day. And I did not eat a second time. You see how we must have a relationship with the Guru, his home, his family, his even the means of feeding us, how we must think of him and not of us, of ourselves. These are all exemplified. Once somebody told Babuji Maharaj, you know, Babuji, I'm not conscious that you love me. He said, I'm telling you, it is wrong of a lover to expect to be loved. I repeat, you know, it is wrong of a lover to expect to be loved. Because a lover sees nothing but the beloved, which is the object of his love. And he continues to love irrespective of whether he feels anything or not. I said, but he must feel something. I interjected into the conversation. He said, no, Parthasarathy, you know better, you are trying to support him. I said, no, Babu, people are bewildered, you know. Why you are not? He said, I love only my master, I am telling you. I have no place in my heart to love anybody else. So love is a one-way thing, you know. It keeps going up and up and up and reaches God. You cannot love, in the Bible, they say, you know, the Christian tradition, thou shalt not love God and mammon. Mammon is the rest of the world, everything in it. Men, women, children, wives, husbands, property, cows, dogs, goats. You see, it's a very important lesson we have to learn from the great master. You love without expecting to be loved back in return, that is spiritual life. Otherwise, you know, this degenerates into something like cinematic love, where the wife asks the husband, I love you, but do you love me? He says, yeah, honey, I love you. Of course I love you. If a husband has to tell his wife, I love you, it is considered a shame in India. And a woman will never tell her husband that she loves him. This is Indian culture, Indian tradition, Sanskriti as we call it. This has been centuries old. I am happy to see that today it is still left as part of our cultural tradition. So he said, I never cared whether Lalaji loved me or not. I loved Lalaji with all my life, with all my heart. I lived only for him. And he said, how when he first saw Lalaji, that was it. And he said, I never saw anything else. I never listened to anything else. I never heard anything else. In my heart was Lalaji, in my head was Lalaji, in my ears was Lalaji, in my eyes, of course, there was nothing but Lalaji. Then an Abhyasi asked him, don't you see us? He said, I look at you, yes. And then I understood the difference between looking and seeing. You understand? In English, there are so many words which people don't normally differentiate. I am looking, but I see nothing. I can be looking there, and I'm thinking of Shahjahanpur, you know, and my life with Babuji, and I don't see this. My eyes are looking here. My mind is seeing Shahjahanpur and Babuji Maharaj sitting in front of me, and I'm on the floor at his feet. So you see, looking, seeing, loving with your heart. There is no place even for that love if it comes back to you, because this heart is already full of love for him. Even if he loves me, I'm not conscious. You see, very great lesson which people don't understand. No, no, you don't love me. You love that man more than you love me. See, Babuji told me, a guru is a guru only if he has total detachment from everything. He treats everybody equally. I was wondering, you know, how he could treat a duffer and an elevated spiritual person and probably one who was almost at the last rung of the ladder equally. Many years later, I had a vision early morning, you know. I have told you all about this several times, about a man who goes to a seed store and selects 10 seeds. He thinks these are the best seeds, and when they grow, I'll make a lot of money. And he plants them. None of them sprout. Then I had realized why nature is so prolific with its seeds. Millions of seeds. Because nature knows that they may flower, they may not. Which one will sprout, which one will not, nobody knows. And in the famous parable of the tares in the Bible, or the parable of Esau and the tares, it says of a husbandman, of a farmer, how he went to sow, the sower. And some of his seeds fell on hot rock, and they were eaten up by the birds of the air. Some fell on thorny ground and among brambles, and they were choked to death. And some fell on fertile soil, and they did yield forth multifold fruit. Now, the sower cannot distinguish and say, here it will grow, here it will not grow. Because he doesn't know. It is nature's, shall we say, mystery, secret, whatever you want. Which seed will sprout, which will not, you don't know. Suppose you sow a ton of seeds over 10 acres. Hardly 1 out of 100 seeds will sprout. And of those sprouted ones, 1 out of 5 will die in its growth. That's why farming is such a awesome, tiresome, often unprofitable, heartbreaking thing. No farmer can say that this year I will have a good crop. It may grow well, one rain, everything is destroyed. Like a good Abhyasi who's growing up, one temptation, and he's finished. Babuji said, the Guru is even more than a mother, because he is always in a permanent state of anguish. What will happen to this Abhyasi, to that Abhyasi? And as they grow more and develop more, he says the Guru's work is at risk of total loss. I said, how, Babuji? He said, imagine somebody I have developed over 15 years of sadhana, and suddenly he falls. My work is lost, I cannot duplicate it again. So you see, it is like that old snakes and ladders game. 8, 13, 23, 46, 98. And 98 means you come back to 3 or 4 and have to climb all over again. For you, it doesn't matter. We have spent lives and lives, again and again trying to climb the ladder, coming down, like the myth of Sisyphus in the Greek tradition. For every 4 steps he goes up, he slides down 5. So, the Guru is in permanent state of anguish. And the more we rise, the more is his anguish. What is going to happen to this fellow? So he's very careful. Don't go here, don't go there. Go back straight home when you come to me. And he told me an example of a disciple Lalaji Maharaj had, advanced, very advanced disciple, who fell into some temptation, started to drink and stopped going to Lalaji. 3-4 months passed, and one day Lalaji asked the other disciples, where is this boy? Why doesn't he come to me? They said they were reluctant to tell him. They said something is wrong with him. He said, go and call him. So they brought this boy to him. He said, why are you not coming to me for the last 4 months? He fell at his feet and wept. So Lalaji Sahib asked him, what is the matter? He said, I don't know how to tell you, but I have started drinking. He said, for this small reason you are staying away from me? I permit you to drink. The disciple was very happy. Where will one get such a guru, who says you drink? He says, really, master? He said, yes, but one condition. You must think of me and drink. And this disciple went back very happy, bought a bottle of whatever he used to drink. Thinking of Lalaji Maharaj, he drank it. He had to immediately vomit. After that, he could not retain, and the habit stopped. So even when we sin as we think, we must go back to the Guru just to permit him to remove that taint from us. Then followed the next lesson. One must never be afraid of the Guru. You may think you have committed a sin. Doesn't matter, you still approach. He knows what you have done, even before you come to him. So what is the problem in your being afraid? And then he said about one Abhyasi, who you came to him, and in an assembly he was sitting at the end and weeping. So he was asked a question, why are you weeping? And he went on, weeping, and fell down at his feet and said, Babuji, I have sinned. He said, what sin can you commit which others have not committed? A bottle of wine, a woman? Which fool has not done this? You see? So this idea of original sin, which is present in Christianity, doesn't exist with us. There is no original sin. And for us to think that we have done something wonderful by way of sinning is also a matter of pride. Our ego says, oh, I have done this, I have done that. And our spiritual voice says, yes, brother, you should not have done it. Then we feel we have sinned. And then we say, who doesn't do it? Nowadays, we brush it off. Who doesn't do it? Everybody takes money, everybody drinks. Doesn't matter. You said your Guruji is so powerful. Can you not clean it off? This sort of, justification, rationalization of wrong. So Babuji said this example about the disciple who started drinking and he was cured of that habit. And why we should not be afraid of the Guru. We should always go to him under all circumstances. And Lalaji was very punctual. And Babuji used to say with a, a sort of embarrassed laugh. He said, I'm not, I'm telling you, I am never punctual. I say 8 o'clock and I go at 9 o'clock. But Lalaji, if he said 6, he was there, 6 o'clock. And whether there was any Abhyasi or not, he would sit and transmit. And after his transmission, half an hour, 45 minutes, he would go for a walk because he was, breathless because of the breath control during meditation, which sets in automatically. And he walked along the river for 20 minutes with some 1 or 2 chosen Abhyasis who were very highly developed. And he came back. Then he would sing a bhajan or 2. And about singing, it seems Lalaji used to have excruciating pains in his abdomen. And Lalaji heard him singing. He used to sing bhajans. Babuji asked him, Lalaji Sahab, can you not cure yourself? He said, Ramchandra, I am telling you it is a matter of a second. Then why don't you do it? He said, anything I get has to come only with his permission. If it has his permission, I should never object to it. Because it must be for my good. God will not permit anything to happen to me which is not for my spiritual good. So how can he reject it? Then he said, but how can you sing when you have such anguish and pain? He said, I am telling you, when I am in pain, I have to make some noise like ayo, yor, ha, ha, hoo, hoo. Instead of that, I sing his praise. And Lalaji said, again, who will get a guru like that? Who will get a master like that? You see. So how to treat pain, how to treat illness, how to treat poverty. Because Lalaji had less than 8 rupees a month. And he was running a family. There was a very nice short movie made by our Pune group some years ago, about Lalaji's life. There we see all this. His eldest son was who died. Anguish. See. And yet, he bore it all with utter disregard of the loss. Saying, well, he has gone to my master, gone to God, before I am blessed with that. That sort of attitude, you see, that one dies. He has not left me because I still feel his presence here. And he is to be blessed because he has reached the destination sooner than I. See, I have been here 50 years and I haven't made it, and my son has gone there at birth. See, which of us, this man who just left? I was speaking so many things about moha. Putra moha also I pointed out. He is suffering because his son died, leaving a wife and child. And another son is a drunkard. And he is brooding over these things and spoiling his condition, going deeper and deeper into that agony and that misery. I told him last night, why do you do this? When you come here, you must be cheerful. Forget this. It doesn't work. Because he thinks his love for the son must be shown by suffering, his suffering. and his, anguish. I said, does he not drink when you are there? He said he does. Then he said he's not drinking when you are not there. What is the difference? Your presence or absence doesn't make any difference. He could not accept it. He said, no, my wife is calling me urgently. Instead of going yesterday, my words had the effect of keeping him here till noon today, and he has decided to go. So you see, all the teaching falls on deaf ears. Unless, as I said, we are willing to listen, willing to believe, willing to accept, willing to work upon it. So I think we'll stop there for now.